for 99% of everybody else, right? People who have Alzheimer's, people who have cancer, people who have epilepsy, right?
Of course.
A whole plant extract is going to be a superior cannabis medicine. Should people have the right to get isolates? Of course. People should have the right to choose whatever cannabinoid form they want, right? We were all given endocannabinoid systems. They're there for a reason. And, we've learned we can figure that one out on our own.
I think a lot of people are endocannabinoid deficient, and I love the idea of cannabinoids being fortified into foods and put into drinks, and just like for people to have more access to them, because I think that a lot of people are endocannabinoid deficient.
Well, yeah, of course, right? It's the largest neurotransmitter system in the human body, and in most of the world, for most of, at least the last 50 years, people have been deprived of the nutrient that engages with that neurotransmitter system. So it's crazy. When this period is looked back upon, it might be 100 years before it's looked on from this perspective, but prohibition of cannabis will be recognized as this like bizarre thing where human beings willingly divorce themselves from the most valuable plant on the planet.
Yeah.
And people will look at it just incredulously.
Mm-hmm. But there it is, right? Maybe this is the human race learning a valuable lesson. Like we were talking about earlier. Maybe we're just making a big...
What I find very valuable about the regulation and the changes that are happening today are that they're actually making you test, dose, exhibit, show strain, value, like whether it's THC or CBD, so you can make educated decisions on what you're consuming.
Yeah.
Because previously it was just you get a bag of green or you eat a gummy, and who knows what the hell's going to happen.
Yeah, consumer protection.
Consumer protection
is the best part of the new regulation, right? There's a lot of really
For
bad
me,
parts.
personally, who's eaten a really hardcore edible, and was not prepared for it. It scared the shit out of me. For real. Like, called 911, like the cop in the car, called 911. That story. I wonder that story. That was me, like, he called back. Now I can sit there and say, I just want a little...
10 milligrams for you, man.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm good with that.
And definitely none of Skunkman Sam's 1,000 milligram goo balls. You ever have one of those?
Oh my god. 1,000 milligrams?
1,000 milligrams.
So that's what I ate. That happened to me.
Yeah, 1,000 milligrams at a sitting is...
It's not for...
It's probably dysphoric for most people.
Yeah. I remember Rob Walsh taking like 2 and going walking out on Queen's Day. It's just like, you're a machine.
Yes. Well, look, everybody's system is different. Everybody's needs are different.
That's it.
We've learned that.
Your buddy Bruce over here, on the other hand.
But I think CBD is going to be a bubble, and that bubble's going to break. What we know from a fully legal, mature cannabis market where people have access to the full spectrum of cannabinoids.
Yeah.
Very few people choose a CBD isolate.
Yeah,
right?
Of course.
And most people prefer, I'd say, of all of our CBD-rich formulations, whether it's a flower or a tincture or a capsule, 1-to-1 is really the most preferred combination.
Yeah, some THC in there.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
Bruce founded Weed MD in Canada. And so before that he worked in like old folks homes, so he came from a highly regulated business already. So everyone was like, the cannabis industry is so regulated, and Bruce was just like...
Well, it wasn't just that, the regulation knowledge and experience. It was more around the polypharmacy issues with seniors and looking at seniors suffering with over prescribing of opioids and antipsychotropic drugs, and looking at the value of cannabis that could actually treat some of these indications. And that's really what made it for me valuable to get involved. And in 2012 in Canada, and I'm gonna speak to the beginning of time of cannabis.
He always jokes about that because people say that to him.
No.
I've been around
this
since
is
the
the
start.
beginning.
Yeah, since 2012.
Yeah, since 2012.
A lot of people say that.
you know, I thought this could be a really interesting segue of my career path and, you know, what I've been involved with my whole life, and still teach and provide value for seniors and do it differently. And when I made my first business card and it had a cannabis leaf on the back, people looked at me like I was an alien, like the pharmacies and the corporate world, and like, they were like, are you insane? I'm like, well, maybe I am. Maybe I am a little insane. But, you know, it's evolving and it's developing, and I'm super glad that I chose this path to go on with you guys on this adventure. We're the pioneers and really have blazed the trails and like really unloaded and figured out the science for what we're doing here. And I'm learning every day. I have no idea what's going on from 2012 to today. You know, that's like 6 or 7 years of hardcore, intensive sort of training. I mean, it's a lifetime, and every day is a new day, and every day you learn something totally new, and it's a very complex world. And just like you know, novel cannabinoids and everything that's happening, and THCA and this and that, and terpene values, and what the effects. And it started with sativas that make you feel awake, and you know, indicas make you tired.
Turn into narrow leaf drug
It's like,
cultivars.
oh no, is it really the
Thank you.
So it's like all these things that we're learning about this industry that's so, and this medicine and this herb and this incredible plant that makes this so unique and valuable, and just loving the journey.
And that's why you caught that insanity, right? It's why you
Yeah,
caught
yeah,
that
yeah.
insanity, which I call
yeah.
divine madness,
Right.
right? I mean, we have all been called by something, right? Which is, I don't think we've fully wrapped our minds around, or our hearts around, or certainly our brains around what this thing is. But we're all being called by the same force at the same time.
It's incredible, and it leaves you with like a really great feeling at the end of it all. And you know, at the end of every day when I was in the long-term care world, I'd come home and I'd actually have this feeling of like, I actually provided for the world today. Like people died and we took care of them. We let them live their lives with integrity. We celebrated their life for as long as they lived in these homes, and like all this stuff, you know. And when I transitioned out of this career, and I was thinking, how am I going to ever like compare to this value in my life and feel the same way about and interested in something? But this has actually done that for me, and so I'm, you know, this experience has actually provided that value for me with all the patients and all the lives that are changed and all the incredible stories that are shared with me over the last 7 years that I've been involved, and feel very fortunate to be included. And yeah, every day is an adventure.
Is cannabis in any senior facilities in Canada now?
Many.
Okay.
I had actually like corporate contracts in seniors facilities to provide prescriptions with the doctors to treat medical indications. Like for real with cannabis. Like, and that's what's going on right now.
And how do the patient histories look there?
It's evolving. And people are interested, and they're, you know, it's not the 90-year-olds that are like looking at this so intensely. It's the children of the seniors that are looking at their poor parents like being all doped up on opioids and drooling on themselves and are non-functioning. Well, let's just try this for a minute and see if they respond. All of a sudden they're walking around. Holy shit, grandma hasn't walked in 2 years.
It's true, it's crazy.
She's been sitting there drooling on herself. We thought she was done. Well, look, she's dancing, having fun.
Yes.
It's freaky.
It's hard to feel bad when you feel good. Like it is.
You know?
It really is, you know? Take a good dab. And
that's the
like,
truth, though, that this happens.
Well, so
It's not evidence.
one of the things I'm going to do on this trip is visit a elder community down in the Cauca.
yeah, we were
Yeah,
there.
I was there.
You were there?
Yeah, we spent a full
Well,
day
14
there.
hours in the Coca.
Okay.
People were like,
Did you go to this community?
No.
Oh, okay.
The one that you went to?
No, I'm getting ready to go to, right? It's an
Okay.
elder community that features a vegetarian diet that incorporates nutritional cannabis into that diet, cannabis medicines, and topical treatments.
Awesome.
And so I'm getting ready to go down there and see it, but you know the organizers are just reporting amazing
Outcomes.
results.
That's awesome. I'll tell you, try to leave at night.
Oh, yeah.
And you'll see all the lights on the mountains.
Yeah.
That made me so happy.
Me too.
Like truly.
Really?
And then I was hanging out with El Gato.
It looks like
there's lights all over the mountain.
like stars like in the
seems
hills.
beautiful.
It's just
Yeah. At certain
and
points you can see like
you know these are little family
100
communities in these mountains. It's so crazy.
It sure wouldn't be hard to find them. It's like, we should go see it grow. There's 100 of them right there.
But remember that all of those farms are growing hybrids.
Oh yeah, they're growing botrytis actually. I'm not trying to be insulting by
Plenty of
any
that,
means,
too.
but I'm telling you, like, I did not see a leaf without it. I was very shocked.
There's a work to be done in the hills for sure. And
Felt
the
a
cool
little
thing
itchy.
is, it wasn't too long ago that they discovered that you could change the photo period of the plant to make it bigger.
Yeah, exactly.
And these lights all of a sudden emerged. So
There's these key figures, and so El Gato was one of the guys that went up into the hills, the Marimberos, and he showed them how to extend their light cycles. All those lights, a lot of them are there because of him. And I told him, I'm like, dude, that's like epic. Like, you're like Mustafa, the Nigerian that brought Lebanese screening techniques to fucking Morocco in 1965 and started this huge thing. Like, imagine being the one dude that went to Morocco and was just like, hey, do you guys know about this? Have you ever seen this before? Like 150 miles of cannabis just get planted. It's unbelievable. So anyone that says one person can't make a difference, I don't buy it.
yeah.
You know, it takes a lot. It takes all of us, but there are certain key people at certain times that just crack it out of the park without even trying. You know.
Yeah, but then you always wonder, right? Was it the time or was it the person? And
Yeah,
you
true
know,
enough.
It's like it's taken an army of thousands of us.
Oh,
right?
tens of thousands.
Oh god.
Right?
I mean,
The
this goes back
stories
very
and the
far.
people and
This doesn't go back to the 20s and the 30s. Like that's bullshit.
you know it's
Back
strange
hundreds
though.
of years, maybe thousands.
So in the European tradition, I would put the date at around 300, which
300
is
years.
when the Roman Empire adopted Christianity as its official religion.
Right.
And then bishops were sent out all across Europe, right, to cut down the sacred groves of trees, to poison the sacred springs, to burn the sacred books and knowledge.
The Muslims
and
were doing
the men
it
and
too.
the women, right?
You know, not just the Christians. I don't know if it was 14th or 16th century in Cairo, but the Sufis, the Muslim Sufis who were hash eaters, they were having their teeth wrenched out in the squares. They would put their fingers down their throats. If they threw up green and it was cannabis, they would pull their teeth out. And guess what? They didn't stop eating hash.
Yeah, no, it's that's one of the
Amazing.
stories that I tell about this too. If you go back in history, what you find is that cannabis has always been an object of suspicion by elites, financial elites, racial elites, religious elites, right? Any kind of elite. And I think the reason for that is that the authority of the direct spiritual experience that we have with cannabis is stronger than any other intervening mediating authority
They can't have
ever going
that.
to be. Can't
Can't
have that.
have that.
Right?
It's so true. It's always been that, like seemingly forever, where people have just, and it's people who don't use it that have this massive problem with it. You know, I think it was Dr. David Allen that talks about the amygdalic hijacking of the little switch that's fight or flight, and he talks about the endocannabinoid system and how this little switch gets like rusted in to flight mode. And so a lot of people that are like really severely endocannabinoid deficient are like, they want to be prison guards, they want to be in the army, they want to work for the police, they want to like have control and rule over people. And it's like, those are the people that have the most problem with people using cannabis. Like, dude, just don't use it. It's fine. We're not causing any harm. We're just habitual florists.
Oh man, it's like Steve said. In 100 years from now, we're gonna be looking back and say how silly this discussion is.
What we have now, we never had before, right, is with the reforms that have happened and the science that's happened, we now have an ability to absolutely document everything that we've been saying.
Right.
So now modern science is
Right.
coming along, and like for years,
Yeah.
we would be like, oh yeah, you can go look in the old medical textbooks.
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
good for
yeah.
this,
Oh,
it's
yeah,
good
yeah,
for that. And they're like,
1987.
oh yeah, they're fucking hippies, right? You know,
That's right.
it's like,
Fucking
oh, now
hippies.
take a look, and
Yeah.
you know, we have the human clinical trials.
Data libraries,
demonstrate-
analysis, and computers smoking
Yeah.
about
With people
efficacy and
holding everything in the palm of their hand, like access to all of
Ugh.
it. It's just like, oh, we should check that out. It's like boom, boom, boom,
Data
boom, boom,
trials.
just like
It's
showing up
cool
right on your
stuff.
phone.
That's-
You know, say what you want about those things, but they're definitely like a part of the revolution. You know, like people revolting because of what they learn on these phones.
Totally a part of it. Okay, the difference between before internet and after internet, right? When I first started doing activist work, if I wanted to catch the government in a lie, I had to sneak into the university library, which was like, you know, a 2-hour bus ride away. Because I was too young to go into the university, right? I'd have to go through these card catalogs.
Oh my God.
Then I'd have to find these old dusty volumes of
Microfiches?
like original material. Then I have to copy them, right? Then I have to like get this stuff. If I wanted to share it with anybody, I'd have to like run it off on this old technology called a mimeograph machine and fold it up and put it in envelopes and put stamps on it and take it to the post office, right? It took forever to find out a government lie and debunk it. Now, right? It's like I see some piece of bullshit that comes along, I go debunk, and I put in the name of the study, and usually like I've got 6 or 8 people around the world who've already analyzed the thing, proven it to be false, right? Boop, 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 boop. My 40,000 followers know about it, and they're spreading it all around the world. So the internet,
It's
man.
unbelievable.
It is like that cop indication about the fatality of edibles.
Oh yeah, did you see the RCMP what they announced in Canada recently? With the Lego gummy? Did you see it? They said this Lego gummy was such a high milligram dosage, it was enough to kill a toddler.
Oh my God.
They have since retracted their statement. And if you read their retractments, it's amazing. They're like, we took a 25-pound dog and injected it with 3 ounces of extract intravenously, and we surely thought it would die. And a day and a half later, to our surprise, it was fully recovered. Then we took another dog and injected 7 grams of pure extract into it, you know, and they're just like, to our surprise, once again, there's no dose we can give these dogs to induce death. It's like, yeah.
They could have just like gone back to the East India Report, which the English Parliament commissioned. It was published in 1894, and they already tortured dozens of dogs to prove this way back then. They did not need to do any more dog torture.
You know what,
We're good.
I don't know if you've ever been to the ICRS, but the International Cannabinoid Research Society. So I was there in Leiden in March, and the first day was great. I went with Dave Watson and some other a friend from Segra, a tissue culture company, and you know the first day was all John McPartland. It was Ian, yeah. John McPartland spoke, and he was great. He's a character. He was doing the pollen study of where the pollen was found and tracing the history of cannabis through these pollen tests that they've done, and it was great, all plant-based. But the next day, it turned into like, we tortured these mice for 14 hours at a time, and they're like, they have to give them so much smoke because, and I asked the guy, I said, why do you have to give them like that much smoke? That's the equivalent of like a person smoking 10 pounds. And he's like, well, when we give them a small amount, we can't tell. I'm like, yeah, that's how it fucking works, dude. You're not supposed to destroy them with 10 pounds worth of weed and then walk them across a board of nails to see how fast they react. I'm just like, listen, there's got to be better ways for us to figure out mechanisms in the brain. Like maybe we could take psychedelics and learn about some of this stuff. Like, why do we need to torture animals? I couldn't sit through it. Torturing monkeys and dogs and rats and mice, and I was just like, man, this is like part of the science that I'm not a big fan of. There's got to be another way we can create a system that can still produce results. We can learn these mechanisms. We can learn how they work without creating that karmic debt once again.
Well, let's see here. In all of recorded human history, there is not one death that's been produced by cannabis. Right? We know this. So we can't have human trials. We instead need to torture animals who don't have the ability to give informed consent. There's plenty of human beings happy to give their informed consent to participate in cannabis research.
Fucking Willie Nelson. Research that guy. He's been smoking pot for 50 or 60 years. Like, it's unbelievable how they just look at it. Like, still to this day, I think that until they acknowledge that it's not dangerous, that we don't need to protect children from it, that maybe we should protect children from pharmaceutical drugs like fentanyl and alcohol. Like that, those things have very low LD50 numbers. You know, the amount, which is also a sick, if you know what LD50 means, that goes right back to testing in animals, and it's the amount of the dose that they give the animals when 50% of the subjects die. And that's...
At the end of the day, you protect children from everything, you know?
Yeah, of course.
They're developing. End of story.
Yeah.
I mean,
But it's not such a worry the way they treat cannabis like plutonium, and you have to have a biometric 3-foot thick safe with rebar enforced, and it's like treating it like it's plutonium is part of.
Yeah.
To me, it's just part of
Then you go
why
to
it's not
everyone's
going the way we want
family
it to
homes
go.
and their bars are sitting out on their
Haven't
counters. It's
Yeah,
like-
of course.
You're totally right. You know that they still regard cannabis as a bad plant and as a dangerous plant, and that informs everything. So in California right now, we have basically since legalization for adult use on 1/1/18, we lost about 50% of the previous legal consumer base, right? Because the tax rate went from around 10% to, in some cases, above 40%. Okay?
There you go.
And everybody who was in the market before January 1st, 2018, was somebody who had a recommendation from their doctor. A lot of them were veterans. A lot of them were seniors. A lot of them were families with children
And they
where the
didn't get
parents couldn't work.
consideration for the medicine, for the medicinal part. They didn't get consideration in the tax. There was a split, right?
There is a very
It's
small
nominal.
discount which can be given, okay? But in order to receive that discount, you have to have a doctor's recommendation and you have to have a state-issued cannabis card. When you start adding up the costs of the
everything that- the
doctor's
requirements and
visit,
whatnot.
right? The time that you take off of work, going down to fill out the application, picking your card back up again, you have to be, quite a heavy consumer to be able to justify spending what amounts for most people to $400 or $500 to get a discount that's about 7.5%.
Yeah.
So the treatment of cannabis as a sin product instead of a wellness product has sent people who need a legal regulated market the most, people who are vulnerable, who have compromised immune systems, back into the illicit market where the cannabis is untested, right? So you see it everywhere. The tax rate of cannabis in California is magnitudes higher than the tax rate for alcohol. So the state is incentivizing people to consume a substance which we know makes them reckless and violent, right? And disincentivize people from consuming a product that makes them gentle.
You raise a good point because, I still talk to the people, in Canada and where we're, there's heavy taxes on this product and they can go still visit their buddy Bill and grab their bag and they don't pay taxes on that. But I'm like, how crazy is it that we've evolved to the point where you can actually go in and make an educated decision about the product that you're going to buy? I mean, to get to that point for the testing and everything that's required to ensure that the grow and everything is clean and tested and profiled, there's a serious cost to that, and I think there's value to that.
I agree, absolutely,
Personally.
definitely. No, definitely. Look,
I'm talking to guys that are well off and can actually afford this, and they're saying, "Oh, I just still buy it off Bob because I get it for $40 for half an ounce." Well, I'm like, dude, what are you smoking? I wouldn't. We've evolved. This is something that you can go to the dispensary. This is this is that. You can see the profiles. Get involved and learn about what works for you.
it's something that cannabis consumers have a right to. Okay, every other product for human consumption is tested to make sure that it's safe. So the idea that the only way that you can get a cannabis product that has been tested and is safe is to pay 50% or 75% more than you would need to on the unregulated market is just another one of these examples of where the stigma that attaches to cannabis just continues to create all kinds of social harm.
It does. Yeah, you're right about that. Well, these things are expensive. I mean, to get to that point of accuracy and...
No, it's not the cost of the testing that's raising the price of cannabis, at least in California.
Yeah.
There's some cost attached to testing, okay? But what's really driven the price high is the fact that the taxes are so high. And the reason the taxes are so high is because there's a whole constituency in the state of California that would prefer to keep cannabis as inaccessible as they can for as long as they possibly can, in the misguided belief that they are protecting society by doing that. And many of them actually think that they're doing the right thing.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
You know,
They have to.
you're 100% right, and I agree with you wholly that the cost of the testing isn't raising those prices, but it's the cost of the production to meet the criteria for the testing for release for distribution. That's where the money is.
Yeah, I
invested.
know, but what we get in return for having to bear those costs is the ability to scale, and if you can scale efficiently,
Yeah.
then you
I
can cover
agree.
those costs.
I agree.
Right?
I
And that's
agree.
why I'm, as much as I love small
Yeah,
craft
now we're talking.
growers,
Now you're hurting. Yeah.
right? No, man. I mean,
know what you're saying.
it's
I hear
again,
ya.
this
I
is
hear
a
ya.
place where cannabis consumers deserve what every other consumer has. Okay, and yes, we should always be able to get good craft cannabis.
I agree.
And we should also be able to get cannabis that's grown at efficient scale that may be a lower price. And we should always be able to
I
grow
agree.
cannabis in our own homes, right?
Agreed.
There should be a multitude of ways for us to get cannabis because there's a multitude of cannabis consumers with different kinds of
All
needs.
true.
No,
All
that's
true.
totally it. And there's a huge new infusion into the cannabis culture of all these new people that were never a part of it before. So we have to be open with our arms and welcome
Like who?
them in.
Like who?
Like all the people.
What are you talking about?
Well, I don't know any
this
personally.
OG.
I don't know any personally.
2012, but
2012. We were at a meeting one time, and the guy was like, "Yeah, I've been involved since the beginning. Around 2012, 2013." Bruce just said, "Was like, what's that guy talking about?
I'm OG too.
He knows people who are doing it before that, right?"
I've been here since the beginning too.
Well, I got my 25 years in. For us, we started very young. Jack's book. We were in our teens. We got Jack's book. We started reading it. We were like, "Are you fucking kidding me? This is crazy." And we were living in Manitoba. And so we were like, how are we going to do? My dad pulled me aside and said, look, if you're going to do this marijuana thing, you better do it right. Didn't want me getting in trouble. So me and my friends were like, let's become hemp activists. We learned all this shit from Jack's book. We live in the prairies. Let's create a document, get some meetings with our Minister of Finance and our Minister of Agriculture, and let's propose that we grow hemp in the prairies. And we went in, and our deck said, on the front page, it said, the $1 trillion crop. And the guy's just like, what? We're all dreadied out, reek like coming off mushrooms from the night before, students of Terrence. And he's just like, what is this, guys? And we're like, turn the page. And he turns the page, and it says, the $1 billion crop. And he's like, what's this? I'm like, well, that's a magazine cover from Popular Mechanics in 1932. And I'm pretty sure it was the first time $1 billion had ever been used in an economic statement. And all his ears perked up because he saw it was a real, it was a page out of Jack's book. Tons of pages out of Jack's book.
He's
right?
going to believe an 80-year-old magazine before he's going to believe a handful of dreadies,
young
right?
dreadies.
Yeah.
So anyway, it took 9 months, and we got a license to grow hemp. We planted our first 5-acre experimental field in Manitoba in 1995. By 1998, all the groups across Canada had organized and changed the law from experimental to commercial. That was when the hemp seed companies started coming into play. That year, we started a phytoremediation program in the Ukraine to remove radioactive nucleotides out of the soil using hemp. We didn't know that could happen, but the people who grew in Ontario were tobacco farmers. Joe Strobel and Jeff Kime in 1994, they got
That's
the first
awesome.
license.
I like that.
Well, they spray radium-226 on their tobacco fields. It's a radioactive nucleotide that raises the levels of nicotine. Not allowed to do it in a lab, but you can do it under the guise of an herbicide and a pesticide that they have to wear like hazmat level 7 suits or whatever. Super poisonous shit. So they have to test their field. And so after the hemp crop, they tested it and they were like, this is weird. Like, where did it all go? And they're looking at the hemp, and then they tested the hemp, and they realized, whoa, hemp is pulling out radioactive nucleotides. So that turned into a Chernobyl project, and it turned into this pretty cool thing that kind of it was the company was called Consolidated Growers and Processors, and it didn't go anywhere. I mean, the woman that was in charge of it maybe was a con woman. I don't know. She ended up in prison. The company kind of folded, but my partners started Manitoba Harvest, and so that company recently sold. Well, about 3 years ago, it sold to the Compass Group for 133 million, and then the Compass Group just sold it to Tilray for 419 million. So a hemp seed company, you know, like that was just kind of started by a bunch of dreadies that were like, hey, we should.
No, I was in the hemp industry when all that happened, man.
Yeah, it was amazing.
I started my company Ecolution in
I remember
1990.
Ecolution. We were supporters. We sold it at our hemp store, the Hemp Exchange.
Yep.
We used to buy Ecolution. It was one of very few. I mean, what was it? Two Star Dog came down later down the pipe.
Two Star Dog came was a little after us.
There was a couple other companies. I mean, Danny always had access to good stuff, and Rob was, another good source. But Rob's doing hemp again now. I don't know if you know about Rob Clark's project in Turkey.
In Turkey.
He's got this He's doing beautiful rugs and all sorts of beautiful stuff.
Really?
It's called Hemp Boutique, I believe, and he's working with a good friend of mine from Turkey, Amir. And they've got beautiful stuff. They got like drumsticks that are stalks with like fibers, like rolled.
Oh, okay, all right. We got to remember to talk to Rob about this.
Yeah, give Rob a call. He'll be stoked.
So, do you well, let me tell you all a story, because I'm not even going to ask if you know it, because probably one or two of you might, right? But if you take a look at the Indian flag of India, you'll see that there's a circle in the middle of it, and that circle is a spinning wheel. And the reason that it's there is because of the role that textiles played in the Indian movement for independence. So back in the days of the English Empire, when it was ruling India, right, they would buy cotton from Indian farmers at very, very low prices. They would ship it all the way to Manchester. They would mill it into textiles, and then they would bring it back to India at a ridiculously huge profit. So Mahatma Gandhi started a movement for Indians who supported independence to spin their own cotton and weave their own fabric.
On like an 8-foot backstrap loom or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy.
Exactly, right?
That's insane.
And the fabric that was produced is called khadi. And khadi has this very distinctive rough texture.
Yeah.
Looks just like hemp. And it became the symbol that supporters of the independence movement always were. If you were a supporter of the independence movement, then you were khadi. You wouldn't think of buying fabric that was produced in an English factory and are making the English Empire rich, right? So I think the time has come now for us to embrace that vision for cannabis, right? For a long, long time, it was difficult to find hemp products that were reasonably stylish enough that they could catch traction. But I think that's changed now, and as soon as I start finding some more really great hemp stuff, I'm going to start wearing it all the time. I'm going to start talking about it, right? Because that is another thing that we can do to break down stigma and educate people about cannabis.
Yeah,
It's very easy. Oh, take a look at my jacket. Did you know?
We'll show you something that you'll probably find interesting and appreciate. We have, I was so involved in the hemp projects from the beginning. I moved out to BC very early on, 96. We got hemp going. I was like, okay, my partner's like, go to BC, be our pioneer. Well, they just stayed in Manitoba and did this hemp thing. I ended up hooking up with Hillary Black, becoming the first grower for the BC Compassion Club. She was like kind of in love with Todd McCormick. She was like, should I go back down to California and live in a mansion next to the Reagans and grow weed? And I was like, or should I stay in Canada and start a compassionate club that's like, she became a servant to the people. This girl who grew up like fairly like, in West Vancouver with a well-off family, gave up everything and just went, and her integrity was so high, she just like didn't make any profit for like 20 years. And so I felt, that experience of getting to grow for those people. They were all terminally ill. This was 97, 98. So it was a lot of AIDS patients suffering from wasting syndrome. It was a lot of junkies out on the street that had acquired all sorts of heinous diseases. Like some of them were stacked, like 5 or 6, and then they had mental health problems. And it was the beginning of civil disobedience, where we were kind of like, we can't do this for headaches. It's got to be something serious. Where it got, California all of a sudden some years later, it's like, well, they're just going for headaches. Like as if it works for headaches. Little did they know how deep the rabbit hole went, right? Where people are just always trying to, downplay the effects, but yeah, just moving out to BC was an amazing thing. You know, meeting Hillary, doing that for the club, getting busted at a roadblock with 16 pounds and a bunch of cash because people were breaking into her club. They were driving cars right through the front windows and then trying to steal the safe. So I took home some herb one day and got popped at a roadblock with it and became one of the first Compassion Club cases in Canada. Richardson versus Regina was my case. John Conroy was my lawyer, and it was, I had no idea, but anything over 3 kilos in Canada at the time was a maximum fine of, can anyone guess?
25?
25 years. 25 years for just over, and I'm like, whoa, like, just a second, like, this is just flowers. Like, what are you guys talking about? I don't think anyone's ever been given it, unless, you know, there was other circumstances going on, but it still freaked me out to face that. And in that moment, it was a cop who busted me at a roadblock, and I remember thinking, like, is this a costly mistake or a valuable lesson? You know, I lost all this stuff for the club, and I felt like I had to pay it back, and then I had to pay a lawyer, and I had to do all this stuff, and I didn't know what to do, and I started the bubble bag company. That was, and I thanked that cop years later at a roadblock. He was Constable John Lowe. I pulled up to a roadblock. I was like, John. He's like, who's that? I'm like, Mark Richardson. You don't remember you busted me at the roadblock under the bridge in West Vancouver? He's like, oh, hello, Marcus. And I'm like, listen, dude. I said, listen, I want to thank you because, and I'm not being sarcastic, and I'm not like, I really want to thank you. Like, you helped me in a way that I can't even begin to thank how much. Like, it's like because of you, like thousands of people around the world are making their own clean hash. And that would have never happened. And he was kind of like, what are you fucking talking about? You know? And I was just like, I'm serious. I'm not being negative. I'm not trying to be like, give you a fuck you. I'm like, I'm serious, man. Like you're a big part of this. You're a big part of my history, man. And I'm going to mention you every chance that I get because you're a part of my history.
You know, I said earlier, I think we're all being called by a force that's too big for us to comprehend, right? And that force works in some really mysterious ways, and sometimes it brings us pain so that we can be motivated to make the changes that this world needs.
Exactly. I'm a firm believer in that right there.
I agree.
100%. Well, man, what a pleasure sitting and hanging out with you guys. It's you're definitely a person I've wanted to meet for a long time. Being in the industry for so long, I've admired the things that you've done, the moves that you've made. I've seen, I've watched, I paid attention. And today, when I was just like, I gotta text him. I'm just gonna be like, I know he loves hash. It's beautiful hash. Let's link up. I figured you'd be super busy, but
not too busy for this. Look, when I got busted in.
You're smiling on a cloudy day?
I got busted in 1990. Smile on a cloudy day. I got busted in 1999 with exactly 190. I even forgot. In any case, the important part of the story is that I got busted in 1999. A couple 100 pounds of weed, a fairly serious charge in the United States at that time. And where was I going? So I get busted, right? I fucking lose everything that I've worked for, right? All the cash, the house, everything's gone, right? I'm like 45 years old, right? And I'd already been in the process of moving to California, but I got out to California and I got like nothing, right? So I go into the dispensaries and I see these ugly little balls of black goo that are supposed to be water hash, right? And I was like, I tried it, you know, it didn't work for me. But I had read Rob Clark's book, right? So I understood the process, right? And
hashish one.
Yeah, hashish, where he had instructions for making water hash, right? At first I started out with the coffee cone, right? I started out with the coffee cone. So I was like familiar with the technology. In fact, when I used to go down to Mexico, I would bring coffee cones with me so that I would be able to, you know, have some good hash to smoke while I was down there. But I took a look at this situation. I was like, all right, there's an opportunity here. So I got your bubble bags. Nice. I took those bubble bags up to Mendocino County.
Oh shit!
Right, and I started collecting everybody's trim, which at that point they were like, "Oh, you want to take it away from here? Oh yeah, I'm getting ready to compost it.
You changed
take it
all
away,
that, though.
Right?" And so what I did differently was drying and sieving the product, right?
course.
And then branded it. Shiva Crystals was the brand,
Right.
and we hit the market probably like 2003 is my guess.
Yeah.
So, man, you know, your bags helped me
That's
build
awesome.
a business that allowed
That's
me to
awesome.
get back on my feet.
That's
To
awesome.
start Harborside, which allowed me to do this other stuff.
amazing.
That's
Awesome, man.
happened to me.
That's
Great
And
story.
thank you so much.
Oh, thank
crazy.
you, man. I
Yeah.
tell you, it wasn't too like 2003, 2004. I'd get calls from guys from Eureka, Trinity County, all in that area, Mendocino,
That's
and they'd be like, look, dude. I don't know if you know how much you changed shit over here, but like, no, listen, this is funny. We're fucking erecting a statue of you. You know, it was a joke, but it was still like, when that guy said that to me, I was like, bro, like that fucking touches my heart, man. Like, I mean, I'm just selling bags. You guys are the ones putting them to use. You know, I'm just putting the information out there and teaching people, and it's been one of the biggest blessings of my life being able to do that. You know, going to Jamaica in 2000. Bringing bubble bags, turning all the farmers in Orange Hill onto it, giving bubble bags away, you know, to the tune of a couple grand each trip that I did, because I knew no one's going to be able to buy $250, you know, bags. But just teaching people that was so rewarding, and being in the grill when they had the one High Times Cannabis Cup, I can't remember, 2014 maybe, and they're announcing the winners for the hash, and it's like, you know, third place is this guy Winfred. He's one of the guys I gave bags to. Second place is Junior. He's like one of my bros that I taught personally. First place is Ziggy. He's the guy that I gave the first bags to in Jamaica. Like, it was unbelievable. I was just like, this makes me feel so good.
Oh, of course.
And to see the pride in their face, you know, like I took this skill, I kept it over the course of 19 or 15 years, and I worked it, and if you listen to the bags, they can direct you to finding the cannabis that you're looking for, you know, or growing better cannabis, or figuring out how to get a plant to express those profiles to the maximum, you know, effectiveness of its abilities. And so a lot of people didn't get that, and the people who had great weed, they made bubble hash and were like, this is genius. But 80% of everyone else were like, they made that black goo balls, and we're just like, no, let's just make butane. Because no matter how shitty your weed was, butane always kind of came out as a gold oil. So to a lower level kind of connoisseur, someone that's just getting into it, that's good quality. That's like, look at the quality. It's like, no. Like, that same resin would be like sand that you couldn't press together if we made bubble out of it. And the number one question for bubble hash makers is, well, how do I get my hash to melt like yours? And I always have to say, well, I don't want to be a dick, but you have to grow better herb. Like, you have to. And if you listen to the bags, they're your word of God. They'll direct you. You can just keep trying new things, making mistakes, learning, and you know, putting yourself out there to get this knowledge that's out there, because there are incredible people putting this out nonstop. Instagram, you know, Twitter, Facebook, like all the different cannabis sites, all the different social medias. Like, it's amazing how willing people are, in particular with cannabis, to share their knowledge. Like, it's like we're all super, like you said, there's this calling that it's like, not only am I super passionate about this and making it my life, but I have to scream it from the mountaintops too. You know, like, scream it from the mountaintops.
You absolutely have to scream it from the mountaintops, right? Because, I mean, my belief is that the existence of our species, and possibly the existence of this planet, is riding on that. Right? If you take a look at all of the ugly things that are happening in the world today, and in people's hearts and minds, and in the way that we're treating the planet, a wake-up call is clearly needed. We need to start thinking in a different way and acting in a different way. I don't know of anything. Well, I know some other visionary plants, but in terms of what's realistic in today's world, I don't know anything else that's capable of making that change in the time that we have left. What is it, 12 years that we supposedly have left to dial down global warming before it's like not going to be dialable down anymore. So.
Before we pass the point of no return.
Yep, so scream it, right? I mean, that's what we've been doing all these years, and we just got to keep doing it. But here's the good thing, right? Like, what I've seen here in these two conferences in Colombia is that, you know how under Prohibition, it kept us all isolated into these really, really small communities. Okay? We couldn't be open, and so we had our own small circles of tight people that we trusted. And that operated on a local level, it operated on a national level, right? And now with reform actually reaching multiple different countries around the world, right? We are able to come out of our hiding places. We're able to like say, oh, hey, you look kind of like me. Hey, you kind of talk like me. You even kind of dress like me. Maybe, are you in my tribe too, right? You know? So we're seeing this like coming together of this cannabis tribe that has been existing all around the world for all of these years, but we've been forced and dispersed into this like hidden diaspora, right?
Yeah.
And now we're coming out of those hiding places, and we are meeting each other,
Linking.
That's
All these little
learning,
linking.
teaching, right? That teaching function that we've been doing.
I think if you teach correctly, you're always learning.
That's it.
You know. We have another meeting to go
All right,
to.
guys.
What a pleasure! I'd love to grab a picture with you and Bruce.
Let's
If
grab
that
it.
was possible, that would be amazing. And
Gang.
good to meet you, man. We'll see you again.